Has everybody signed up? Everybody ready?
Go.
City of Smithville, special called council meeting for public hearing and budget workshop number 5. Wow. But September 4th, 2024. A notice is hereby given pursuant to the Open Meetings Act, Vernon's annotated civil statute, Article 625217, that the city of Smithville will conduct a special called meeting, public hearing, and workshop on September 4th, 2024 at 5 p.m. in the council chambers of City Hall, 317 Main Street, Smithville, Texas. I open the meeting, I call it to order, and we will begin with our presentation from the city manager on the 2024-2025 fiscal year budget.
Madam Mayor,
Yes, sir.
before he starts, I'd like to make an opening comment,
Sure, go ahead.
if you don't mind. Appreciate the opportunity. I had some time last week while I was fishing in Maine to do some soul searching. And I came to the conclusion that I'm disheartened that we haven't done a better job of reducing expenses and developing revenue plans. We haven't really made any hard choices to keep from raising the property tax rate. Instead of reducing headcount, we've increased it. Did we really take a look at streamlining headcount or making changes on job descriptions to reallocate talent to areas needing help? I've learned a lesson from this, my second budget season, that to get a real reduction in expenses, or at least look at reimagining our departmental assets, including human resources, we need to provide direction upfront in the process to deliver a budget proposal that targets a specific reduction of whatever the number might be, say 5%. And to see an increase in revenue, we need to give direction of creating a plan to deliver a targeted increase of at least 10 to 15%. We don't need to say that we can't do it. We need to look at what we must do to make it happen. We all do it in our households, and for those of us who own businesses, we do it all the time. If income to the household budget is declining or revenue in our business is down, we look for places to cut and new sources of income, such as a second job or creating new income opportunities and product offerings in our business. We here are running a $16.5 million business. As far as where we are tonight, we followed the typical pattern of increasing spending and the tax rate to the maximum allowed without investing in finding new revenue streams or making really hard choices about our spending. So if you'll allow me to present a hypothetical scenario, if we were to say no to the new property tax rate and keep the current rate in place, that would cause us $263,000 shortfall to the proposed budget. That would mean city staff would have 4 days to cut that $263,000. But what are our real options? The obvious option, and I call this the elephant in the room at the last meeting, is to take a look and cut or reduce the COLA to create up to $398,000 to cover the $263,000 lost by not increasing the property tax rate. That would leave $135,000 to fund most of the money required, $140,000 for the building inspector and maintenance workers. I'm inclined to only support an increase in the property tax rate if we were committed to the revenue side of the budget equation and invest in economic development. This is the only way to end this cycle of increasing fees and taxes to support budget increases without making really hard choices about how we spend the people's money. So tonight, I'd like to tee this up for discussion and hear what my colleagues have to say. As I've always said, everything in life is a negotiation. Thank you, Mayor.
Anybody else want to add to the opening statement? Okay. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I think Councilmember Jameson asked for opinions, I guess. Mine's pretty well documented. A lot of his comments are not dissimilar to what I had been talking about. Last year when we approved a really, really large budget, there was an informal quid pro quo, and I was on the record as saying that I was supporting it wholeheartedly because I felt like the employees deserved it and had been neglected for a long time in the raise. But I did so with the full expectation that there would be a meaningful and material investment made in economic development to generate more revenue. And despite the, I think, Herculean efforts, and I would commend the city manager and the staff, we've had more budget meetings, workshop meetings. We've had tremendous amount of time and effort put into this process. So I want to applaud that effort. But effort is only one part of the equation. The outcome's the other. And I just have a really difficult time looking to our citizens as just essentially a slush fund where we just figure out what we want to spend and then we just know that we can cram it down and they'll pay for it. So I said last time I wasn't comfortable with it. I'm still not comfortable with it.
Anybody else? Yes, ma'am.
I have given this a lot of thought and it's very difficult. You know, it's one of those things where not everyone's going to be happy, and we know that that's how it is in life anyway. It's not always fair. But I'm real concerned about this 13% tax increase. And I really know that the city staff here is invaluable and they do a great job and they deserve to be compensated. I wasn't around when the 16.5% increase, the COLA increase was given last year, but I understand it was warranted. And I'm sure I would have supported that as well, considering where it was prior. But I would too like to consider reevaluating the COLA to help offset tonight.
I appreciate everybody just speaking from the heart and saying how they believe. I've been off with my knee and unable to walk and talk to the people in the neighborhoods. And that's what I generally do is walk in the morning, see everybody out, talk to the other people that are walking. There's no doubt there is angst with a lot of people about the tax increase, but there's also angst with a lot of people about cutting services and making, that what happens if you cut the services and say we cut the trash people, the leaf and limb people back, and all of a sudden, because they help so much in the winter and doing the things, then instead of taking, 3 or 4 hours to get the electricity back up in a winter storm, people were without electricity and everything for a considerable amount of time. The people in the office here have created a way forward with all of the work that they have done. I've heard people say, well, you really haven't made all the cuts that you made the cuts that you wanted to make. Well, there's pick and choose, whether it's your business, whether it's somebody else's business or anybody's way forward about how they want to run their business. We are here to make policy. I do agree with that. That's what we do. We are here to pass a budget. I do think if we're coming here 4 days before the budget and we haven't done something really firm before now, I think we're pretty late in the game to be starting a change right now at this moment.
Thank you for the comments. Welcome everyone to the 5th budget workshop. I'm going to address the comments that are made with the utmost respect. This is not status quo. This year was an unusual situation that occurred with the over 65 freeze. We had 37 people last year that qualified. There's 467 this year. This is an action that the council took in 2021, and the bill is due. We made significant cuts, 240,000 with a real cuts in this year's budget. And Councilman Jameson, you said, we're adding headcount. Well, had it not been the maintenance worker or the building inspector, you were willing to hire an assistant city manager and an economic development director. So it's kind of yin yang here as to what and how we proceed going forward. Councilman Jenkins' comments, yeah, it's 5 days until we pass the budget. So as I go through this, you need to think real hard as to what, if you want to lower the tax rate, if you want to reduce the COLA, what do you want us to cut? That's your job. We have given you input, 5 budget meetings. My staff has gone over this countless times and have given you a budget that we feel works without degradation of future services. So as I get into this, please be thinking of that. Okay? Go ahead.
I would like for you to reiterate our tax rate. In the past years, how many years we have gone without a tax increase? We have been since 2020.
Try talking to the mic for those people. I'm sorry.
I think I have it on. But if you could bring, I know you have your presentation, and I'll be glad to share this with anybody that 2020, 2021, 2022, 2023, these are all been hard years for everybody. But we maintained to keep our tax rate the same. And this year, it will go up to incorporate all the services that our city is used to receiving. And so I'll be glad to share this with anybody to see how we have kept our tax rate at a comfortable rate for many, many years. And so as Robert goes through his presentation, I think he will cover all that. Thank you, Robert.
Mayor, at the same time, we've been increasing the budget through tax notes and other methods. So we have still been raising taxes effectively on the citizens by increasing utility rates and or borrowing money, which goes to the debt burden side of the budget.
She printed.
I've seen it and studied it.
Yes, and so you see where the tax note, Cynthia pulled all that information up today for us. So anyway, take it away.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, the first thing I'm going to just talk about, well, thank the staff. I mean, 4.5 months we've been trying to work on this budget and y'all have been awesome. All the department heads have gone through and identified their needs, plans and projects and what they can live without. Cynthia, I can't even tell you how many hours you spent here. Really appreciate your efforts. So I wanted to make sure I communicate that. And the council for all your efforts looking through all the material, because it's a lot. Yeah. We're going to talk about action items since the last workshop and the changes that were made as directed from workshop number 4. I'll give you a very brief budget recap, 24-25, budget drivers and history, and an opportunity to review the projects and plans by priority. It's something I was working on quite some time and took a little while to get out due to fires and other things going on, but I think you have a nice list that prioritizes 57 projects, input from various citizens, staff, and council. And we'll go through that in greater detail in a moment. We'll have a public hearing on the tax rate, public hearing on the budget, and then you can take whatever action you feel with respect to individual components of the budget, but voting on the budget and tax rate is going to happen at the September 9th council meeting. Okay? Then we'll finish up with summary and next steps. Action item review. 12 action items have been assigned during the budget workshops. 11 of those have been closed, 92% closure rate. From the last budget workshop, the direction I was given was 3% COLA, 2 headcount, the maintenance man and a building inspector, a 0.619997 tax rate. And you can see this a little better than the last chart. I'd like to review the projects and plans to make sure you're okay with the ranking or the rating, the priority that have been assigned. If not, we can change those, give and take. What's changed since the last workshop? Well, I went back and took out the revenue from the Enclave and Garwood Park as you requested me to do so. That was an aggregate 38,000. Added back 10,000 in expense for a potential city manager performance-based incentive. Added 48,000 back to utility fund for the RV park utility usage. Mr. Simmons is going to open this park up around the Christmas time frame. It's 175 spaces. Mr. Simmons pays out non-residential rates at the RV park. So that's water, sewer, and electric. And I did 50 spaces. Okay, and there's a calculation that I've done that's going to bring in 48,000 additional dollars to the utility revenue, which I just forgot about and found out he was going to open. So that's goodness.
Does that come for 2024 or that goes into that's going to come into this new budget because December is after we've established
Yes, sir.
this current?
Yes, sir. And I did remove 35,000 from the general fund budget under solid waste and put it on the tax note. Again, in an effort to try to reduce the overall impact from year over year budget increase. This is the Department 170. There's the 35,000 coming out. That also enabled us to reduce the interfund transfer from the utility to the general fund, which has been about $1 million. It's 47,000 less, but it's in the right direction, as Jack Clark has instructed. You got to get out of the habit of using the utility fund to fund everything else. Okay? Questions?
Excuse me, Robert, why's the other professional services circled again on that?
That's the tub grinding, the fee for tub grinding
Okay,
that
okay,
we're currently undertaking.
right, okay.
Y'all got the video?
No.
I'm sorry. She's talking about the 35,000. That's where we had in next year's budget to continue tub grinding. Right now, we've released tax fund money using 2022 tax note, the interest to pay for the grinding itself, and 70,000 from this year's tax note through the reallocation, the last budget meeting, to haul it off. Okay? So it's a $110,000 endeavor. We're also looking at trying to remove that was already there. This is grinding up all the brush and limbs that were there, and they haul off the new mulch, but they're also going to haul off the old mulch. Then we're going to come in, push it down, put dirt over it, and manage it in a completely different way. The biggest thing is it will no longer be open to the public. Okay? In the past, Bastrop County, the school district, contractors from, Elgin to Elroy know that it was free to dump out there, and we don't have the resources to put someone out there. Okay? Still would like to continue the leaf and limb service for our citizens, but it's going to be postponed for a while. I will say this, the next week, as the tub grinder is there, we're going to make a sweep through town to pick up that is already on the ground. We'll put out a flyer. Our current garbage contract does allow us to bundle, citizens to bundle their vegetative debris, bag the leaves or bundle up the limbs themselves. It's a 4-inch rule, no more than, rule of 4. No more than 4-inch diameter, no more than 4 feet long, no more than 50 pounds. Until we can get the proper procedures and processes in place to ensure that dump never catches fire again. We're working with the Texas Forest Service to come in and do fuels mitigation, and another couple of entities out of Austin to come pick up the mulch that is ground and haul it off. So we're going to fix this once and for all. And again, the biggest thing was allowing everybody to come out there and do it for free. Okay.
And Robert, the forestry service, that's a free service to the city. They do this for free. They give us advice on what we can do.
They're looking at that. Yeah, advice is free. You know that, but
Work. They're
Yeah.
going to actually do work.
mobilization of equipment and such, and a whole plan to mitigate the fuels and rearrange the fire breaks between where we do store temporarily mulch and the surrounding properties. So that's been ongoing for, since the fire occurred. And I hope to have a definitive plan in the next 2 to 3 weeks.
Robert, if it's closed permanently, do you have other uses for that property that you've considered or that we'll be considering?
We can talk about that. It's always been, we could put a recycling center out there. I don't know at this
Curious,
time. But
just
we
curious.
have to do something with the leaf and limbs after a storm. And other people, other cities, Bastrop and Elgin, they do transfer stations. So somebody comes in and it's chipped, they pick it up, haul it off. It's just a cost of doing business. Okay? But there are some composting companies that come and get it, and you can contract with them to do so.
Yeah, there was, Jill and I both had an email. I can't remember who it was right now, Alexia or somebody like that. A local company, they wanted to come and get all of our leaf and limbs. They would be charged, but they would bring back really rich compost and stuff for the city. So to give to the residents. So, there's options just depending on what we decide to do.
I didn't mean to go into all that, but I thought it was important to know that there's things happening in the background. And so we'll run through next week or so, try to get the leaf and limbs that are out there currently. All right, just a very brief recap of budget drivers. The inflation rate actually went down 0.1% from 3 to 2.9. The cost savings we identified, and I showed this in 3 or 4 meetings, they were real. They weren't like, don't repave Ramona Street. They were real cuts that each department made to their operating expense. So I'm proud of them for doing that. 65 and lower tax freeze has caused $119,000 impact. That's just the frozen taxes. There's also a homestead exemption for disabled and over 65 of $10,000. That makes that total in actuality $128,000. This year's budget is very interesting in that we have I consider it an inflated budget because of the give and take through expenses for operating the airport. We bought the fuel concession. Fuel next year is going to be $180,000, but that's going to bring in $200,000 of revenue, or $12,000 revenue. And then we're going to purchase some hangars. Typically hangars, when you have them out there, they're on a ground lease. It brings in aggregate, each hangar, $120 a year. That same hangar, if we own it and can charge rent, brings in $4,500. So we're using some of the tax note to help purchase those hangars, which is also eligible for ramp grant at 90/10. Okay, so this is another way of bringing in revenue to help offset the expense of the budget. So I'm claiming here it's budget neutral, 555K, but actually it's budget positive. Estimate 12 to 20 to the good. The additional headcount requests, 140,000 for a building inspector and maintenance worker. COLA for employees was 398,000. I have a worksheet in the back as backup. We talked about last time that even if you give zero COLA, it's still going to be a $248,000 hit because of the increase to FICA, TMRS, workers' comp, retirement, payouts, longevity, and long-term disability.
Robert, so in effect, that's a result of last year's increase then?
It's a result of, as function of last year's increase, plus the 2 headcount that we're adding, plus the natural increase in what it costs to do all these things. Workers' compensation rate, we had a couple of incidents. We got people retiring, so you have to accommodate or account for that going forward.
So show me the number again. If we went with a zero COLA, what is the cost?
$252,000.
So that's a savings of 146 to the budget.
Correct.
So that 146 could be used to roll over and pay for the building inspector and the maintenance worker.
That's already included in that number. If you do nothing, zero COLA, they're already in that headcount, in that number.
So then it would actually be $146,000 savings.
Correct. From a 0 to a 3%. Yeah. Here it is. Where I talked about the interfund transfer, and again, there are no plans to raise any utility rates or fees. There's a breakdown of the budget, $16.7 million proposed. That represents a 6.12% increase year-over-year spending from last year. But again, keep in mind, the $555,000 for the airport operating expenses is inflating the budget. You take the 555 out, you're actually looking at a 2.5% year-over-year increase. Snapshot of the debt, we've gone over this. We will pay down $856,000 next year and get our debt back to FY22 levels. Okay, any questions? That's a very brief.
Another point of clarification. So on the current proposed tax rate at 0.619997, the VAR, the net impact to the budget is it's increasing. It's giving us $264,336.
That's correct.
And that's with a 13% increase in the property tax.
12.94, correct.
That includes the contested and free.
That includes everything, yes.
Your net taxable, but then you have to add back in the freeze. If you look at the chart, there's a column for the freeze. It's kind of a set rate. I don't know if Teresa did that they gave.
Cynthia, talking to the mic, please. I'm sorry.
Speaking to your. Turn the mic on.
The amount of tax dollars that we're collecting incrementally going from the 5.4 to the 6.19997 is how much?
264.
That's the 264 that,
Yeah, the 264 on your maintenance and operation, yes.
okay.
And I was at the Best Breakfast last week.
Okay.
And Fawn said that all the protests and everything else were pretty much resolved at this point. All of them were done ahead of time. Like usually they're still going on, some of them.
We okay with where we are now? Talk about priorities? And then we can come back to the other discussion.
Yeah, we may have to come back.
Okay. All right, so I took all the input that was given to me by citizens, by council, by staff. There are some 57 projects. There are two that aren't on there, reopen Ramona Street and upgrade the Smithville Youth Rodeo Facility. Those would be threes had I put them on there, but I just wanted to give you that edification because there were council members that asked to put that in. So what I've done is try to set some type of a rating scale, high, medium, low. The highs are must do in the budget years. The mediums are might do in the budget years. And the lows are nice to do, but not going to be in this year's budget. Okay? Can y'all read that on the right there? No, you can't. So what I also did in the file that I sent you, I don't have to go through it right here, but I identified the funding source, gave you some comments as to what it was for and where the funding was going to come from, whom recommended the project or plan, and then a priority, and of course, estimated cost. So I've got worksheets for each of those. It's kind of neat to see how many came from council, how many came from city staff, how many came from citizens, and then how many ones versus twos versus threes. So of the one priority, many of these are projects that are ongoing, are those that I know y'all wanted done. Okay? So I don't recommend we go through each line item. The citizens in the audience, there's a page. If you don't have it, be happy to give that to you. So what I recommend, if you see something that jumps out at you as not a one, or that's a two that should be a one, or a three that should be a two, now's the time to tell me. Okay. And all of them are very nice projects, but you know, limited budget and resources, you have to pick. So I think the staff and I have done a pretty good job of outlining, and you guys outlining the ones, twos, and threes. If no questions. Hearing none, it's time for the public hearing on the proposed tax rate.
Kathy has somebody that.
Do you
wants
have a
to
statement you want to read, Kathy?
I had a neighbor drop this off and she couldn't make it. And so Jennifer said just to include it as a public comment. Okay. This is from Judy Smith at 303 Mill Street. Hello, my name is Judy Smith and I've lived in the city of Smithville since 1993. I would like to submit my objections to the proposed tax increase. The city has consistently raised taxes for the past several years without pause. Over the past 10 years, using the proposed 2024 rate, taxes have increased 278%. In 2014, my city taxes were $534.22. And now in 2024, my taxes are proposed to be $1,484.40. While I do understand that occasional increases are necessary, I do not agree with the current method of raising the taxes every year to the voter approval rate. With the state of the economy and the unprecedented inflation, I think it is imperative that the council considers the impact that raising taxes has on the community when many families are having a hard time just making ends meet and feeding their families. Raising the taxes on property also means that in order to cover expenses, landlords will have to increase rents. I also do not see the logic in raising taxes on businesses that are barely hanging on. Is this the city's answer to growing the tax base, putting people out of business? We can already see what has happened to the dining establishments, and I can only surmise that the additional eateries that were expected to move to Smithville are having second thoughts. Not only is business down with people not being able to afford eating out, now these same businesses will have to pay more in taxes too. The council should consider that not all taxpayers are created equal. Not everyone is salaried employee with a guaranteed income. I personally have seen over a 50% drop in the typical amount of business due to the economy. When I look back at my time here, I tried to see what benefits my taxes have brought. In the past 31 years, my street has been repaved one time. It is currently growing weeds, and the amount of loose gravel from the cold paving is terrible. The only time the city does anything to the alley is when there's an incident. There is no maintenance performed. Taking an evening walk in the city is hazardous due to the lack of enough streetlights and uneven roads. Quite frankly, it is no better today than it was 31 years ago. Not only have the taxes increased, but the permitting and requirements have become more onerous. If I want to upgrade my electric, I have to go underground. And while I love the idea of having all underground electric, the cost is prohibitive, so this is something that will not happen. It would seem that the city of Smithville is more interested in ways to raise revenue via taxation than they are in finding ways to improve the lives of its citizens through careful and thought-out budgeting. We always hear the same old trope. It's only $300 a year or $25 a month. We also hear it from the county, the school district, the federal government, our insurance agents, et cetera, et cetera. Respectfully submitted, Judy Smith, 303 Mill Street, Smithville.
If we're going to read into the record, we got an email this afternoon from Jenny Bush. Do we have that? Can we read that? She said she couldn't be here. and then-
Yes, go ahead.
I don't have it. I didn't print it. I didn't know we were gonna.
I just saw it when I
But-
came back in. There you go. Please read it.
This email is from Jenny Bush to council and mayor. She says, this is just reiterating my 3 minutes given a couple of times on the matter of your budget workshops, your thinking and your decisions. Number one, cut expenses, do not increase budget. Everyone I speak to thinks the budget should be cut. I've been asking to see where the budget is being cut. A, we haven't seen any demonstration of cutting equipment, supplies, use of materials, et cetera. B, what about cutting staff? I could point out some excess and waste in the rec center staffing. Just ask. 2, no pay increase at all. Why does an entire city have to be held hostage for a pay increase for plus or minus 112 employees? We, the people, have not received equitable pay increases over the past 2 years. It feels nice to say you take care of your employees, but they're way overpaid, especially at the management and directors levels. We aren't Austin or Dallas, folks. We are Smithville with a median income of around 55,000. 3, cut donations off for all nonprofits. Give them some soft value like charge less for rooms, street closures, things that don't require money out of our pocket and will help them fundraise and do their work to earn their own needs. I suggest that you save the $20,000 to $50,000 that you give to such agencies and let their agencies do their own grant writing and fundraising. 4, stop the bleed with all the feel-good arts projects. We have enough art going on around here. They can survive on their own talents. Why use the time and talents 4 or 5 city personnel to keep 2 to 4 artists in spending money? It's not right, good business. And I can say this because I am a retired artist, retired first LPAA president, first LPAA co-director of the LPAA First Saturday Art Festival, and the city never had to funnel money our way. And the city never charged us to use Gazebo Park. We all helped each other freely. Something's wrong and I will be happy to help you fix it. It's just about stopping the sucking off of the taxpayer because I'm reading this verbatim, because there's a grant out there. It's usually taxpayers' money and it's not a good practice during a down year. Sorry, I can't be there tonight, but you have heard me say this at 2 previous meetings and here it is in writing. Darrell, are you signed up to speak tonight? Did you want your text read? That's it. Thank you.
Anyone else signed up to speak?
Okay, Mayor and Council and Public, next is the public hearing on the FY 24-25 budget. Anyone signed up to speak?
No one signed up to speak.
Hearing no one signed up to speak, I will carry on to the summary of where we are thus far. The budget is balanced or rebalanced at 16.67297. The increase in airport revenues are inflating the budget. The over 65 tax freeze and the homestead for disabled is also impacting the budget. Proposed tax rate at this point is 0.619997 per $100 valuation. 3% COLA, 2 additional headcount. We reduced the interfund transfer by 47,000. And again, we're not raising any utility fees, electric, water, sewer, or garbage. All right, now it's time for discussion because all I have next is what the next steps are. So I'll turn it over to council or mayor to turn over to council.
We need some direction here.
Robert and Cynthia to help.
I don't think your mic's not on.
I would like Robert and Cynthia to help walk me through the numbers on the hypothetical I spoke of earlier, because I don't know that I've got these numbers right. If we were to do a 0% COLA off of this current proposed budget, it would save 146K. Is that correct?
That's correct.
The current VAR proposal is producing 264K in additional revenue. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So if we subtracted the potential savings of a 0 COLA, the 146K, from the 264,000 that we've got from the current proposed tax rate at 0.61997, that would leave 118,000, which, if I'm looking at the chart correctly, Cynthia, that could be achieved at the 3% increase of a 0.758952. That shows the increased revenue being 112. So we'd be 6,000 short if we use the 3% number and put the tax rate at 0.578952 instead of the 61997. Am I accurate in that?
You're correct.
Okay. Just to point out to the citizens, when we look at increasing the property tax rate by 13%, 12.95 or whatever the number is, it's not a significant material amount. And to generate the money needed to fund the budget as proposed, it takes that large of an increase percent-wise to generate the extra $264,000 that we needed. That impact is $297 per year to the average household, or I guess that's $25 a month. Even if we were to go with a lower tax rate and using this example of going to a 3% increase and a 0 COLA, the tax rate is still having to be increased by 3%, which seems to be a lot of difference between 3% and 12.95. But it's not a whole lot of dollars. And I think more than anything, the principle that I've been hearing from the community is that we keep coming back with a new way to do it. Last year, we did it with increasing utility fees and a capital tax note. And yes, to the mayor's credit, we did not increase the property tax rate. So this year, we're not hitting utility rates or doing a tax note, but we're hitting the property tax rate. So we continue to have to find creative ways to fund what seems to be ever increasing budget. That was a statement from me.
Can I add that, again, this is an unusual circumstance because of the 467 people that are now eligible for the over 65 freeze.
Understood.
That brings them $275 to $300 on average per person. That's a bill you got to pay. And
Understood.
our expert, Jack Clark, says if you don't pay it now, it could be worse in the long term. So that's a decision that and an opinion that you've been given at the last meeting. I understand no one likes their taxes raised. I sure don't. I have 6 acres in town. Not fun. But
Well, at the same time in that letter, he's got a paragraph on the second page that has said his recommendation is to adopt the VAR and look to the future growth and possible expenditure cuts. He's recommending that we do look at expenditure cuts. I do realize that we did come up with 240,000 in cuts. And as a percent, that's 1.4 something percent of the total budget. So again, a lesson learned, as I said earlier, maybe in the beginning of the process in the future, we start out with an objective that says we're gonna cut expenses by 5% and raise revenues by 10 to 15. And we start with that direction in the beginning. I do realize that we've got 5 days left. I just wanted to bring out these options when we say we're gonna put the staff in a position if we don't approve this tax rate or improve it at a lower tax rate, they've got 5 days to make something happen. But the reality is that a good deal of that money is sitting there in the COLA proposal.
tell them that. Tell them.
Well, if you do change it, it's not 5 days, because I would have to have that to Jennifer by Friday to get her
Okay,
to
3
post
days.
it by Friday. So
Yeah.
I've got tomorrow.
No,
and
but
Friday.
what I'm saying is that there's a bigger solution there. It's sitting there in the COLA, and that's the elephant in the room. That the money's sitting there in the COLA if we choose to do something.
Well, again, let me make this statement. You may have forgotten, y'all took some great pains, and thank you very much for my city staff and everyone for increasing the hourly rate from $15.75 to $18. That was significant. That brought us up to midpoint during the salary survey that I presented you, even after the action. So this statement that we're all overpaid is not true. I've got salary surveys that.
I didn't
show
make that statement, just to clarify.
I am just, commenting on the statement that was made. I know you didn't make it. But it seemed like you took, one step forward, 2 steps back. We're going to be in the same situation. The heavy effort lifting last year was the police. And yeah, you can give no COLA, but that will catch up to you also.
Yeah.
Our attrition dropped from 27 to 7 people this year because this is now becoming the employer of choice. Again, you guys make the decision and we'll make whatever happen. That's what our job is.
Let me
But-
ask a question. So assuming that inflation is really just 3% next year and not more, but let's just assume whatever it is. And let's assume where would you envision in the next budget cycle that we get the additional money to cover the increased cost of running the city?
Well, you've got a guaranteed revenue source through the tax rate. I mean, that's never going to go away if you do that. Now, other sources of revenue, we're working.
You're assuming that values are going to go up, the taxable values will go up.
When have they not?
Well, that's true. They went up a lot lower, but they still went up. And the comment made earlier that while the city hasn't raised the tax rate, that's not to be confused with having not raised additional taxes, because we've had significant increases in valuations in recent years, which has allowed us to keep our tax rate. We don't get credit for doing that. We just didn't need to. People paid more taxes. So my question is, again, this is fundamentally the problem that I have is if we don't stop this cycle is going to continue. It's continued, which was the point of, I think, the letter. One of the points it made is that every year it's just another $25 or another $300. And in a town that, doesn't have a tremendous amount of wealth, sometimes that amount of money does make the difference and it can add up. So if we had a 3% or a 5% increase, what would be the solution next year to cover that?
I don't have that as a top
It would
of
either
my
be
head.
utility fees, taxes, either through rate or
Well, you
valuation.
continue cutting. I mean, at 2 point, if you take out the airport, but that's a good source of funding. You're
But you've
looking
got
at
that budgeted
2.5%.
in, the income
Yeah.
budgeted in. And so
But
it's-
in reality, you keep saying we haven't made cuts, we haven't looked at cuts.
I-
take it out, that's 2.5%. We
I-
never
I don't
had that.
disagree with
Excuse me,
that.
go
I don't
ahead.
I don't disagree with that math. I mean, it really, this is a very difficult situation because the challenge is this is a revenue problem, which means it takes time. You don't just flip a switch and get extra revenue tomorrow. You have to make investments to get that. And my concern is that as difficult as it is to find the money, if we don't have a real plan for economic development and invest in that, whether it's an economic development department, whether it could be any number of things. If we don't start making those investments, then we're just going to be right back here a year from now
Well,
with the
Tom, we
same.
have made the investments. There's developers that aren't moving forward. They are not moving forward. Glenn sent
So
out.
what happens then when you
We
don't have
go back
revenue?
and we,
When you expect to get a raise in your household and it doesn't come in, what do? Do you just keep spending more the next year or do you cut?
no, you cut,
until the
and we
revenue
have
comes?
made cuts. We
Okay.
have made cuts this year.
Well, that was my question was, this is a cycle and we have this fairly unregulated pool of money in utility fees, trash fees, taxes that we can go to. And we just keep going to the citizens over and over and over again to fund that. And at some point, we have to, in years when we don't get the revenue, whether it's developers not showing up or whatever, we need to, find ways to manage the expenses is the only point I'm making. I'm concerned we're going to be right back here the next year with the same situation. And we're going to go, okay, well, we're not going to raise the tax rate this year, but we're going to have to raise the utility rate. We're going to have to find the revenue.
I would like to make one comment. I believe when you say there's no plan for economic development, I know that Jill's been working with the chamber. They're moving forward in a co-op position to have an economic development way where the chamber will be reaching out to people, trying to help us as a city to move forward. Now, this is how Bastrop has done it forever. They're at one point, I believe the economic development part was kind of under the chamber. So this is how the cities have moved forward when they are small and doing what they need to do. You made the point that the Hertas have been the ones that have put land out for sale and other things. We've got Glenn Sinnott that wants his commercial thing going. I would love to see the Enclave come on board. You're right. If they do come up with a high density place, then we're going to have to move forward with it. We do need that part. But we can entice people all we want to come to this part of the country and this part of Texas. But until the people that have the land want to sell it at a price point that meets the buyer's idea of what the stuff is worth, we're not going anywhere. And we have the solution with our economic development we have and the chamber to move forward. I think this next year may prove different, but we don't know unless we give them a chance to move forward.
And historically, when this is no doubt a very large tax increase, it's one of the largest I've seen in the past. When we've gone up 3 or 4 cents, the next year it catches up. The appraised values go up, drives your effective rate or your VAR down. In fact, that's what happened last year when we took the tax note, was to stabilize the tax rate so you didn't give up tax rate, as Jack Clark has continuously said. 20 years back, they gave up 10 cents. It took a decade to capture that 10 cents back. And he's just trying to guide us in a manner that's not going to cause more problems later. Now, again, let us know what you want us to do. Okay?
Yeah, to be clear, when the legislature put in place the rollback rules, what they essentially did is I'd like to think that they were well-intentioned, that they thought about putting legislation in place that they were going to limit people's property taxes. But in effect, what they did was they told every city and every municipality to raise the maximum rate you can without doing a rollback. And that's what we do. I mean, that's just what it feels like.
And it dropped from 8% to 3.5.
So
So
the-
they're
the-
continually limiting our ability
Yeah.
to capture that extra revenue.
At the municipal summit with TML this year, there was great talk about 10 to 13 bills that are going to come up this year that will again limit cities' rights, because they're after Houston, Dallas, and the bigger cities, but it rolls right downhill to us. And we all as cities need to be involved to try to stop that kind of activity from happening.
Well, they're forcing us to be in a position to go to the VAR level. I mean, it's almost like you guys don't know how to run your business, so we're going to put a situation, a scenario in place where if you want to fund yourself, you're going to go ahead and have to take the maximum tax rate increase you can without causing a rollback election. I mean, I know that we've been boxed in here. And what I just keep harping on over and over again is I do believe, and there's harder cuts we can make. I know it would be tough, but there's definitely more that we can invest in. And yes, I hear all the different plans about what we're going to do with economic development, but it's still not a concise plan with action items in it that says, okay, we're going to increase sales tax revenue and the hot fund revenues by 15% next year. Is that material to the budget? I mean, right now we're bringing in 800,000 in sales tax. So even if we were able to increase that by 10%, it's only 80,000. But we've got, if we don't have specific measurable plans in place with goals to try and make it happen, then we're never going to get there. Because right now we just say, okay, we're going to increase the budget 5% every year and hope that the tax revenue is there. So I'm just, I'm all about us getting better at everything we do every day. This is not an indictment of anybody's performance. I love the amount of work that the staff puts in. I appreciate the changes that Robert was willing to make this year to the process. I mean, the fact that this is our 5th budget meeting, it allowed me to learn enough during the first 4 meetings to actually come to these soul searching decisions to come out and say to you guys, is there an appetite for a 0 or a 1% or a 2% COLA? Is there an appetite for not taking the full 12.9%? I don't know that the support's there, but I wanted to put it out here so we have the discussion so that the citizens know where each one of us stands on this.
As you should. One comment I wanted to make about revenue, 30 new home permits were filed this year. $350,000 times 30, do the math on the current tax rate, that brings in 57,000. Our golden goose is residential, it's housing. And further development, business, bringing them in. Rooftops bring revenue, revenue bring people, people bring business. That's 57,000 more we're getting out of property taxes this year. And there's another, if Mr. McCullough goes through 112 or 137, the other developments go through, that's an opportunity.
And Robert, what do we get of the 8.25 on the sales tax? What's our share?
1.5.
1.5.
And 0.5% of that goes to offset the property tax. So you get 1% off of your sales tax.
I would
I
like
still
to-
haven't
I'm
found
sorry.
when that happened, but it's in the TNT Truth in Taxation worksheet that, oh yeah, look at there. So there's been opportunities to help defray the burden on the citizens, and case in point, over 65. There's 400, that's 10% of our population. Their taxes are frozen. But again, that's a bill we got to pay someday. But I'll go back to this. You guys figure out what you want us to do. You got one day to do it.
My question is, in the last year, Cynthia, how much of a turnover have we seen with our employees?
I think Robert said a while ago, 7%, yeah.
27 was the year prior, 7 this year, 75%.
So my whole point to this is, we're out building new houses. We're looking for the best people to build the house. We're looking for the best people to work here in the city of Smithville. We're not going to attract people with certificates to come work here. We are hiring younger people at a base rate. They got to live with their mom and dads. We go and pay for all their certifications. We train them. We give them everything. We build their resume, and then we send them out into the world. We don't keep them. I feel it's very important to pay our city employees. I feel it's very important that they need to feel that they are important. I come up here every afternoon and sit in my office. People come in to speak. I hear people up here yelling at these city employees. I hear people come in. I've been calling City Hall all morning. Nobody's answering. Everybody has a phone in their ear up there. We need more people working here. We have a great staff of Public Works. Edward is leading them very well. When Jack left, he left a big void here. It was horrible. We couldn't get permits to build houses, to get rooftops, to get people to live here, to help our taxes. We have to take care of our over 65. They are the people or the backbone of this society. And it's a big hit to our tax rate this year. We can look at years past what our tax rate has been. I think raising taxes, the last one, I don't want to pay taxes either.
Well, the impact was 119,000, correct?
The tax freeze is 119,000. That is correct.
Yeah.
So we have to pay our employees. I feel they deserve a raise. I want them to stay here. I think it's important for our community to know our city workers. I want our city workers to live here. Most of them live on the outskirts of this town. When they're on call, they have to drive in because they can't afford to buy a house here. So we need to pay them better that they can live here. They're our biggest economic development driver, whatever you want to call it. They eat here, they buy groceries here, they fill their tank of gas up. They do, their paycheck goes back into the city in one way or another. So I feel the city employees deserve a raise. They work hard. Why can't we be the employer of choice? And we attract great people to work with what we have to work with. It is a big tax rate that we're asking, but our accountant, it's the voters, was it voter
approval rate.
voter approval, thank you. And so I am in favor of the tax rate. I'm in favor of the COLA. And
Mayor, let me ask you this, because I think we really did show how much we appreciated them last year with the 16.5% increase. If we went with a smaller COLA this year, even down to the zero, how many people do you think we would lose?
I feel people would start looking for jobs.
No, how many people? What do you think we would go back to losing the 27 that we lost the year before?
I mean, that's hard to
That's
figure.
hard to.
Yeah, I know it's hard. I mean, this whole process.
We
is
have to
hard.
look at,
I said that's rude. That's way too hard to figure out.
Yeah,
that's way too hard to figure out.
Yeah. How many employees you gonna lose? But I'm 100% with you, Mayor, on that because these guys work hard and I've been in their position. You know, now I'm a foreman for the Bastrop County and I see my guys, how they work out there, you know, and they deserve a raise. And I believe all these city employees deserve a raise.
We're going around the room here, I guess, around the table. I was a huge supporter of a big raise last time. I'm still a huge supporter of paying people. I told Robert 9 months ago, when we talked about how big the raise was and whether or not you would include, additional ones. And we got in that situation by not keeping up. I'm a big fan of peer group analysis. We need to pay our people at the wages that the market dictates. I think that it's a revenue problem. It takes investment, and I hear what you're saying. There are things that we could have been doing the last year and a half that we're not doing. We don't have a traditional and a formal strategy. Real estate development is kind of the essence. You need people. Once you get people, then you get businesses open more. I mean, the reason that the restaurants aren't open and they're closing is because it takes $30,000 a month just to pay your rent and your payroll and keep the lights on. Do the math. You got 2,500 households or whatever. If you're a restaurant, how many meals do you have to sell even with a 75% profit margin? How many do you have to sell to cover $20,000 to $30,000 of just fixed costs? It's a lot. That's why they don't stay open. And so we need people. And the way you get people is you got to have houses. And, you have to have affordable entry-level houses. That's the first mover in an emerging town. It always is. And so if it were me, the last 18 to 24 months, I would have if not a tie, I'd certainly have a jacket on, and I'd be in front of every single family developer in Austin and Dallas talking about how Smithville is 2 to 3 years away. It's Bastrop's growing. You come and we'll waive your utility fees, your impact fees. We'll cut a deal with the first 2 or 3 builders to come here. We would be really, really creative with something. There is a lot that cities do. We don't. I mean, we are pretty easy to work with, and we do our 380 agreement, but we could be doing more to recruit people to this town than what we're doing today.
well, you said you've been talking to Mr. McCullough, so you're up front and personal with your tie on. Mr. McCullough, is he coming?
That's a question for Mr. McCullough, not for me.
Okay, well, I had just
no
heard you
idea.
had said you've been.
Well,
speaking with
I
him.
do meet with him, and I shared with the council in the last meeting what I knew, which was that he was going to come back in and ask for a different plan, one that required
Very good.
smaller lots. I don't know whether he'll do that. That's just what he told me.
Okay, thank
but-
you.
I just want to talk a minute back to economic development because this is all tied in together. First of all, I apologize that I've come here tonight just with these new comments because when I did my project list, I didn't understand we only had a short period of time to really, research and make those projects happen. And they take time. These projects, at least the ones on my plate, economic development, I think the rec center could have more going on there. I've been talking to Alan Butler and did not realize the potential revenue if we could get our ball fields up to tournament level. The amount of money after I watched that video he sent blew my mind. Those things take time. Economic development takes time. I mean, we are doing some things with GSLI, and last week we made some inroads on getting blue highway signs with some of the restaurants out there. We finally found someone to talk to through Stan Gertie's office. Sarah's been great. Victoria Allen has taken the lead on that to get the ones that we now know what the qualifications are. We think we can make that happen. That's an indirect tourism effort, but I think it's worthwhile. We're getting our big gingerbread man up on Janice Bruno's property eventually. That's going to be awesome. And we've just had 9 applicants for our facade improvement program to update signage and paint around town for some of the businesses. These are small things, but they matter collectively. And then the bigger projects with GSLI and all that. I think if we keep working and chipping away at this, we have the new restaurant, what is it, Sweet Tea on Main, Carnalenta is under contract. Some things are happening, but it's just so slow. But, and I know it's not what you're talking about, Tom, that to get a economic development person, but these things count, and there's also a show of goodwill in our town. So I think economic development is coming our way. I think we're doing some good things. But I just have been really grappling with this issue with the COLA and the tax rate, and I've heard from quite a few constituents. So I apologize if I personally am throwing a wrench in the works, but I wasn't ready to make a decision. Not until now.
If I may ask you, where would you feel about moving some of the COLA to, for instance, fund the maintenance worker position? I mean, you're adamant that we go the full 3%? Or are you willing to look at other uses?
Well, I did visit the warehouse, Edward, and I asked for a tour, and I was pretty surprised that we only had one maintenance person working on a lot of the equipment that's down. After speaking with Edward at length about it, I felt convinced we needed to fund this position. And I originally was thinking, well, if we just went with the 2% COLA and saved 49,000, couldn't we move that over to potentially fund the $55,000 maintenance position? Is that something you can move that money there?
The maintenance person is already in that budget.
Oh, it's already in the budget.
It's already
Okay.
included.
Okay.
So that 49 is,
Oh, I see. Okay.
And theoretically, Kathy, it might allow us to go to 59 cents instead of 62. I mean,
Yeah.
when you look at it.
I think any little bit we could cut that tax rate would be helpful, even if it's not, and maybe that's not something we all decide to do, but it's just those two things. And I hate even saying that, I don't necessarily support the 3% COLA this year. I hate that. I've been in the business world all my life, and many years there wasn't any COLA. And then next year, perhaps, concentrate on a 4% COLA or something larger if we're not able to do as much this year. Again, I just have been not certain about this, so I wanted to revisit it tonight. And I know it's late, but those are my thoughts on it.
So going forward, they're going to need direction. So So we need to,
Let me ask a
Justif-
question. The 119 has come up, since day one. I mean, that is a hole we have to cover that we didn't anticipate. So the 119,000, I've said at the last two workshops that I wasn't personally comfortable with the 12.9%. I hear what the auditor says. I get it, but that's what they're supposed to say is get the maximum amount you can. That's the way it's set up. If we had to cover just the 119 with the tax rate increase, that I don't know what that number would
It's the
be.
3%. 3% gets you 112.
So if we went from 54, so are you talking about going to 619997 and then cutting elsewhere or just
Now, if you
increase?
chose the 3% option, it goes to 0.5789.
Yeah, that's the
And that
57.
covers 112 of the 119.
Yeah.
So we're
and
7
see,
short there.
Philosophically, I have always been comfortable with that level of increase because I think that 119 was unavoidable. That's a situation that came up that we have to cover. That's where I've always been comfortable. And quite honestly, that's where I'm going to vote. Now, the vote may be, we all are part of a body and we all agree that the majority rules, and I will respect and applaud whatever the council decides. Where I'm at is I'm willing to raise the tax rate to cover the 119. That's what I'm willing to do. I've heard all the arguments. I just think that we go to the well over and over again, and I think we need to give something to the citizens here. I think we need to do that. As it relates to COLA, I want to make sure that the employees are paid fairly. And I don't know whether 3% across the board is the right answer or some bucket of money that is merit-based. I don't know. That's for the city manager. The city manager made a comment earlier that, hey, we've done the best we can. It's your job to come up with a budget. I would respectfully disagree. You're the one that comes up. We set policy and you've got to do a really, really difficult job. Is sometimes you have to go try to solve for something that's really, really hard to solve and involves making some really tough decisions that affects people that you work with every day.
Let's take that scenario of 3 cents. That produces a $152,000 fine that we have to get if you go with the 3 cent or the 57-cent tax rate. We got to find $151,000, which is about what the COLA is. Okay,
So Robert, why do you have to find 150?
because you're dropping the 264,336 at the 61,9997 funds the budget as it exists today. You drop that number, I have to find $151,933. And I've told you, my staff has already gone through, scrubbed a dozen times. So the only place you're going to find that is not given a COLA.
So a zero COLA is 252. Is that right? Yeah, there it is.
Zero COLA is 146. That'd be 6,000 short.
So that 146 then would go down and back to the tax rate, Robert, if you could.
It would go back. Oh, I'm sorry. Go back to
So there's
the,
146 right there is what we're saying
yes.
with
that
a
would
zero
Be
COLA.
revenue
Yeah,
or avoidance, not revenue, avoidance.
yeah.
And you would lose
Right.
151. So I'm 6,000. I would be 6,000 short at no COLA, which we could,
So does
We
a
could find-
5% increase get it?
5% is 77,000 short. You get 186,000 coming in and you have to find 77,000 or 78,000.
So that is, would that allow a 1% COLA?
Let's go back to the COLA chart. One percent is 98.
And what do we need again? I'm sorry, the 118? There's 98 at a 1% and we needed 77.9? Yeah. I'm just trying to get people to go along with what I'm saying, to understand it. So at a 5% increase and a 1% COLA, we've got a balanced budget.
A 5-cent increase and a 1% COLA, you'll still be a little shy. No, you're
5,000.
actually to the good. You're actually to the good.
That's what I thought we was the other way.
Yeah, so 77, 78, you'd lose, you'd gain, going the wrong way. You would gain 98. So 70, you gain 20,000.
Is that more palatable, Tom? I mean, I know you're at the 3%, the 3 cent. I keep saying 3%. That's not correct. A 3 cent.
Personally, I feel strongly that we should be very, 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 very careful about increasing the rate to the maximum rate we can just because we can. That's it. And I would like to see it only be increased to the point to cover the shortfall. But I also have a very, very strong feeling about having some money available to take care of employees if we can. Those are really important to me.
Cynthia, 5 cent increase is what percent? I'm sorry. I know that
Going to be 5 on a 54, so it's going to be a little less than 10.
yeah. And so the
9.
max that we're looking at is 12, not
Yeah,
13.
I mean, it still doesn't feel right to me, but
but it's not. the
but
max.
but 119 of that is explained by, I mean, it's
Right.
just, I mean, we just have to pay that bill.
Yeah.
I mean, that's nothing that, nobody could do anything about that. It just is what it is. I mean, unless we're willing to go cut elsewhere, which I believe that at this stage in the game, we've probably exhausted any meaningful cuts. It'll take more time to look into that
Yeah.
if we wanted to.
So I'm kind of coming to the conclusion that a 5 cent increase and a 1% COLA might work, and it keeps us from going to the max property tax increase to the VAR level.
I mean, personally, I would support that, because it's a balance. It's not preferable, but it gives a little bit of both. It gives some relief to the taxpayers, and it also gives some money to city employees, or gets a COLA. The other thing I would ask, throughout the year, as we see opportunities for to be running ahead of budget, not that that would happen, but it would be nice. It could. Cynthia's like, no,
But we could.
no, like running ahead. and-
Edward is probably pretty aware
Okay,
bare bones at
well,
what he
li-
can. do.
Listen, let me tell you what I'm saying, is I'm saying if we all of us, we're going to have a balanced budget no matter what it is. So when I say running ahead, I don't mean that we find more savings. I mean, what if we end up with more revenue coming in than we thought? Can we, during the middle of the year, update the budget and reallocate any perceived to COLA? If we thought we were going to revisit the budget mid-year and we thought we had more revenue than we had budgeted, which has happened before, could we not give the city manager direction that at that point in time that they come back and that we would have some general agreement that we would allocate those sorts of funds toward COLA? Does anybody, are you following what
If
I'm
we've got
saying?
3 votes to say to
Okay.
do that, then I
Yeah,
think that
what
we
I'm saying is,
Good.
Or
Exactly
even
what
a
I'm-
bonus.
I mean, I follow exactly what you're saying, but it's still at the end of the day, we have some great city employees.
yeah, at
and
the end of the
I
day,
think-
it's still 1% is what you're approving. It's what's
no,
being talked
I
about.
think a 3%.
I know what you think. I'm just saying that's what I think. That's what I'm saying is that I would feel comfortable with what you just said, which is the 5% and the 1%, with the understanding that if we got in the year and we thought we had revenue that was good, that we would allocate that revenue towards
Yeah.
COLA to try to get, because I think we would all like to see more than the 1%. We're just trying to solve for some competing interest here.
Councilmember Meek, how do you feel about that?
I would support that.
So the direction that you
I would
see,
support the 5%,
It's 5 cent.
5 cent. 5%, 5 cent.
5 cent. It's a 10% increase, but it's 5 cents.
The 5 cent increase and the 1% COLA.
where do we go from here?
Well, we seem to have come to 3 of us would support that. I can be swayed, Councilman Jenkins.
You want to be what?
I am, trying to just sit back about this. I am for giving the 3% to the city employees. I know where everybody's coming from. It's always, as I have heard Tom say many times, 3 votes does it. So this is not about anything like that. What we have to do is, if you think this is right in your mind, then you have to vote your heart. I think we all vote our heart right here, but when it comes time on the September vote, we have to be united. Now, that's where we're gonna have to go.
Well,
So,
we're not, we don't take a vote tonight. This is give direction.
yeah, the vote is the direction. We have to tell them what to do.
The whole budget is gonna have to be recalculated because,
We've pretty much done it.
no, you haven't.
Come sit with
No,
Cynthia.
you haven't. Oh, you almost gave Cynthia a heart attack.
It's
Yes.
not like we're going back and
No, uh,
we don't have to go. I will send you pizza.
Well, just to reiterate, yes, you can't vote on the final budget or tax rate, but you can vote on giving me direction as to where to proceed. And that's what I need from y'all.
I would like to recommend that we go with a 5 cent property tax rate increase and a 1% COLA. Are we formally voting?
Yeah. I
We
mean,
got to get there first. Are
Done.
we done with the,
I don't think we're in open.
okay, all right, discussion next.
In your motion, just mention that that it will be voted on at the September 9th council meeting.
Mayor, would you entertain a motion? I move that we adjust the proposed budget to reflect the 5 cent increase in the property rate tax and reduce the COLA to 1%, knowing that we will vote on this at the September 9th meeting.
I'll second that.
made in second, all in favor? Opposed? Okay, then, back to the.
I have the
drawing board.
direction and I would appreciate the later in the year, if we can find the funds, through attrition, through revenue, we can revisit the COLA.
You have my commitment to support that.
Me too, absolutely.
And I
Absolutely.
predict that we may very well find that.
Wonderful things are going to be happening.
Next item is a summary, which is, sorry. Workshop comments, we have our action items. We're going to go back and finalize the budget. You'll vote on the 9th, the tax rate and the budget. And then we'll start performance appraisals and then formalizing the goals and objectives that we've been working on this year. And as always, stay informed, get involved, make a difference. Thank you for your time. Mayor, I have nothing else.
Meeting is adjourned. Where was that page? Where that